the NASA Telepresence Portal Network, promoting serendipitous interactions among NASA far-flung researchers. Wow, that's a mouthful. So John Welch, our presenter, is a web applications developer and systems integrator who has worked at NASA Ames Research Center since 1998. He specializes in analyzing requirements, conducting usability studies, and designing collaboration systems that help to connect researchers and promote innovation. So with that, I'll pass it down to John whenever you're ready.
Make sure we're
Yeah, you're
recording. Great. Can I move this over just? Hi, everybody. Okay, so we're going to shift gears here for a second. This presentation is not about technology. It's not about networks even. It's a NASA sociology experiment, more or less. I applied for a grant with a NASA program called IT Labs, which gives a little bit of seed funding for crazy ideas involving information technology at NASA. And so they thought this was either going to be interesting or would just crash and burn, but they wanted to see how it would turn out. So we got the funding, did some planning, and right now we're rolling the system out. So I'll explain what our idea was, what we've done so far, and where we're heading. I'll try to blast through those slides so we have some time to do some Q&A, because I think that'll be the most interesting. So what is the idea? Well, the big picture here is that NASA has lots of field centers. There's one here in California at NASA Ames in Mountain View. JPL, JSC, KSC. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Right there.
Okay. NASA has lots of field centers, and yet there's a lot of potential for the researchers at those different centers to collaborate if they just knew what they were working on. And there have been some knowledge management based approaches to that, putting together big databases of expertise, who's doing what, and that has its place. But from the anecdotes that I've heard, a lot of the collaborations occur simply because people run into each other at the cafeteria, different things like that. And if two PIs are working at the same center, then of course they have that opportunity to run into each other. But if they're at different field centers that are often competing with each other for budget, there's almost no chance that they're going to run into each other. So this is a start at trying to make more of that interaction happen. Little quote from John Stuart Mills, and little map of all the different scientific collaborations over the last few years. So just some eye candy to say, you know, there's lots of collaboration happening and it's global. So, okay. Lots of detailed text here, which you can explore on your own. I'm assuming you'll have the slides or can get them. But the important point here is that you've got to get workers who don't normally associate with each other to bump into each other, share experiences, and see if there's something that they can work on together. Okay, so the NASA-specific challenge is that although we have telepresence tools, and theoretically anyone could go to the NASA directory, look someone up, start up the video client or any other kind of SIP system and talk to anybody, they don't. They never do that. And in fact, using video conferencing outside of scheduled high-profile meetings is very rare at NASA. So we started to look at why is that? If it can give an emotional engagement that other tools can't, why is that? And we think it has a lot to do with just being overworked and not wanting to invest the time required for the tools. And so there are ways around that. So here's our project approach. We propose to set up a network of teleconnected spaces. We would keep large screens and webcams on at those spaces running 24/7, and we would let everyone know that this is the NASA Telepresence Portal Network. And if you were standing in one of these spaces, then you could see all the other spaces. And especially if we have events that are set up to encourage interaction between people at those different places, maybe a spark would occur and we'd get some use out of it. So our principles, number one, we wanted these portals in high access, high traffic public locations. So not locked away in some lab or a conference room or something like that, just boom, right there at a cafeteria or a library or a lobby, things like that. The second one, always on and no training required. So we want people who have never used this technology to get a good first impression of what it can do. Maybe they don't use it for project work, but they see, oh, that's kind of intriguing. Now I'll go back to my project group and learn how to use the tools that NASA already provides. And the last one, a good quality experience. So arranging the cameras, arranging the gaze angles and so on, so that people actually feel a little bit like they're standing in front of the remote person. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Sound check is good? Okay. So the first point, substantial foot traffic. The third point is, I think, the most important one on this slide. So we initially got some pushback on this idea because people didn't want to feel like they were being watched by a surveillance system. Okay? And so we said, all right, we understand that. Try to think of this as an extension of architecture rather than a system that's being monitored by people that you can't see. So one of the things that we guaranteed was the only way to look at other people is to have other people look at you. So if I walk over and I'm standing at the NASA Ames portal, then people at JSC and JPL can see me and I can see them, and it's reciprocal. And we tried to keep the privacy level of these different locations synchronized so that, for example, people in a cafeteria wouldn't be talking to each other and then someone in a little nook in a library could just sit there and listen to them. So we tried to keep it balanced. All right, always on and no training required. This is really easy for the users. It's actually kind of challenging to set up because most video clients assume there's going to be a user there, they're going to connect and they're going to disconnect. We tried Google Hangouts. We're still experimenting with that. We are currently using video, VIDYO, because NASA has adopted that and it's secure in our environment. But it's been a challenge to keep these things running 24/7 and not requiring too much tending when the network goes down and so on. Okay, and the last one, as a design goal, we wanted to have a very high quality experience. Frankly, we didn't have the budget for that, so it's a proof of concept right now, and we're hoping that we get enough budget to have a more engaging arrangement, maybe with a rear projection screen, furniture that's the same at all the locations, so people, when they enter that space, they feel like, oh, well, a little piece of me is at JPL or JSC. All right, and lastly, once we have the technology set up, then we know it's going to be a brave person who's just going to walk by a screen and see someone over there and say, hey, I'm working on propellants. What do you do? And so on. So it's not usually going to happen. So we plan to set up some icebreaker events where adventurous people could come and they could talk about their projects. They could do a trivia contest, just anything to get people talking, get them comfortable with the equipment, and get them to know others that want to engage at those other centers. We have set up portal chairs. So you sit in the portal chair, you're telling the other side, hey, I'm here, I'm having a cup of coffee, ask me about something. And the portal chair is usually empty. but once in a while people do sit there. All right. Here's a system schematic. It's not very detailed, but the point is that our goal was to have this arrangement of two view screens that are perpendicular to each other, probably in a corner, so that you could walk in, and if it's a 3-node network, you could talk to Texas over here, Pasadena over here, and you get this sense of like physical presence. Okay, those are our current locations. So there's a new green building at the NASA Ames campus. The lobby of that building is a nice place to put a portal, so we put it there. Then there's a library at JPL called the Hub, and that's where the JPL node is. And then finally, at Johnson Space Center in Houston, they have a makerspace where people can work on projects and solder things together and so on. It's sort of a social area, so we put a portal there. And here's a shot of the portal that's at Ames in Mountain View. So that little flying saucer thing that's hovering above our heads, that's a parabolic speaker, and we use that to isolate the sound in the lobby a little bit so we could turn it up a little more and not bother people too much. And then we've just got a standard Logitech HD cam plugged into an old PC laptop. I mean, it's just very basic technology. Okay. So our next steps, we've just rolled the system out. We're starting to have our icebreaker events, and at the end of this deck, I'll show you some preliminary data from our users. But we're going to collect user feedback. We're going to try to adjust the system for any privacy concerns that come up, and then we'll see if there's interest from the other centers, if it's going to move forward, and so on. Okay, this is not for you. This is for our managers, but this is our way of saying we're doing things that are important to NASA. It's not just some hippies in California. So okay. Okay. So a little.
That was a compliment, right? Not a.
That was a compliment. I live in Berkeley. I've lived there for 20 years. I'm a hippie myself. So okay. All right. So a little bit of data that is not in the slides that you have, but once we clean it up and get our N number a bit larger, I'll put it in there, and anybody who wants a copy can have it. So we asked, how many remote coworkers do you work with? And the average was 3 or 4 that are like strong social connections at other centers, and that's a pretty good number. You know, that's a significant number of connections. What are your most important channels for staying connected with these remote coworkers? These are pretty obvious. You know, email and phone is 100%. Instant messaging and texting is about 50%. Social media was quite low, and I think that's because this is a work setting and most people aren't using a lot of social media, but 20%. And then of the people that came to our icebreaker after we said this is about video conferencing with other centers, well, 60% said they use video conferencing. So, next question for you: what factors stand in the way of cross-center socializing and collaboration? So this is quite detailed, but the 2 most significant ones were I don't have any opportunity to run into remote coworkers and chat, so that's not unexpected. And the technology available for remote connections is not effective or is too hard to use. So that also we expected, and we hope people get a good impression of what it can do, then they'll spend some time to figure those things out. And then the last question about the intrusion that a video conferencing system could introduce into a public space. Most said either it's not intrusive at all or okay, but would take some getting used to. The significant thing is here is that blue region in the right of the pie is less than 50%. So there were significant privacy concerns. And I think anybody wanting to experiment with this should focus on that first and really get a good sense of who's concerned and things you can do to mitigate that concern before you even get to implementation. So that's my contact info. Please email me if you have any longer questions or want materials or want to catch up with how we're doing. And we have probably 1.5 minutes for some questions. So, anyone? Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the hard thing to get right technically is the audio portion.
Yes.
Controlling feedback, site-to-site feedback, and then dealing with ambient noise. Are those major concerns?
They are.
John,
They are.
can you repeat the question?
Yes. So the question was, how do you work out audio issues, since that is a difficult thing to do and it's important for the experience and so on. So we haven't figured all of that out yet, frankly. Two of the locations are good, not too much ambient noise. One is a very live kind of lobby, wooden floors, and we've just had to boost our volume and turn up as much echo cancellation as we can. I think using better mics would have helped us, mics that were more focused. If you have any suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them. So, okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is there a mechanism to share content?
There is. So the video client, VIDYO client that NASA uses, can screen share. Not all of the locations have enough screens to do that, but at Ames we've built that in. I think that's going to be an important component moving forward because it gives a context for that interaction. Somebody can talk about something, we can have slides there, and we can also put slides there which encourage people to go look at the slides, and then if someone else is looking at the same content at the same time, they can turn to each other and say, well, that's weird, I don't understand what this is. So, yeah. Okay. Yes?
Just an observation, something you guys probably already know, I have no doubt, that there's a lot of really good work being done for collaborative musical performances that works really, really well for echo cancellation. It's a serious consideration for that. And then just, employing that would also give you another icebreaker of activities.
I didn't know that, actually. So I'll follow up with you right after this and ask you for some tips. Yeah. Yes, sorry. The comment was musicians who collaborate across the internet need some very sophisticated tools for dealing with echo cancellation and latency and all of that stuff. And so we, NASA, should look at what they're doing and implement some of that. And I think that's an excellent suggestion. Yeah. Okay. It would. Yeah. And there's a lot of musicians at Ames. They have a good band. So. Okay. I think that's about all that we have time for. So thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions via email. Thank you.